what I've prided myself on is being not just a politician that helps the people, but an individual that helps the people. And that's what we've gotten away from, I think.
Right.
I think a big problem in our society isn't that government doesn't do enough for us anymore. It's that we don't do enough for each other anymore.
I agree. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a great guy here today. I've been knowing this guy for a long time. When I say great, I don't usually say that about everybody. So this guy has to be great, and I know he's great, and he's doing great things. So this is a great guy. And I'm going to let him introduce himself to the podcast world of Coastal Spotlight. Let him know who you are.
Well, I'm Robert Deming. I'm a councilman for the city of Biloxi. I don't know what else to tell you. Been here for quite some time. A law school graduate, degrees in economics, Wall Street Journal Award, 2-time elected councilman for Ward 4.
He's moving. You're busy.
I am extremely busy. We have a lot of things going on.
You know, even though you're in the political world, they have another world called fatherhood. How's that going for you?
Wow, you put that out there pretty quick. No, I have offspring that are amazing. My daughter is one of the apples of my eye. My son is 13, doing well. So it's, everybody's kid is their favorite person in the world, and mine are mine.
Absolutely, because in the political world, they love to see a father, hard-working father, out there. Even on the campaign trail, to the voters, they looking at you as a father and a guy that's going to change things. So,
well, I think that's actually one of the most poignant aspects of my life, and then people talk about that a lot when they talk about me. Is that I raised my daughter by myself as a single father.
Right.
Of course, my son has his mother in his life, but my daughter was my child. She went with me through everything, thick and thin. Katrina, she went with me to law school. She really was there by my side through some of the toughest things I'd been through as an adult human being. So
when things got a little tough and, sometimes frustrating, trying to make sure everything go well and properly done, you can just lean on your daughter for that, that support to get you back motivated and inspired to wake up the next morning and hit it again.
Well, I'll tell you what, my daughter, there are a few things as amazing to me as my daughter. And when you want to talk about a belief in God, that's where you see it.
Wow.
I think the most valuable years of my life were law school, and not because it was law school. It's because it was me and my daughter in Oxford by ourselves, living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and she'd go to school and I'd go to school, and I'd come home and I'd be with my daughter every single night. And she was as supportive as any child could be, and she was helpful, and she was resourceful. It was one of the worst moments in my life was during that period as well. My daughter has a scar on her forearm, and it's because I asked her. She was, I think, in 6th grade. Now, keep in mind, when I was in 6th grade, I was one of 4 children, and my single mother was raising us, and she worked all the time.
Wow.
So we grew up, and we took care of the house. We went shopping. We would cook dinners. We would do all the cleaning. And so I guess it wasn't even given a second thought that my daughter wouldn't know how to do this. And I asked her while I was doing a little working out, if she would grab the chicken out of the oven. And she did. She got oven mitts in her hands and grabbed it, but as she was pulling it out, the top of the oven, her forearm touched. She didn't realize that the heating element at the top of the oven is what was hot. And so as she was pulling the chicken out, she just inadvertently bumped it and burned herself. And she has a little scar, just above her wrist. And I look at that scar, and it makes me feel like the worst parent in the world, man. Nobody wants to hurt their child.
Nobody, absolutely. And that's great that you telling us this story, because a lot of guys get bad reps when it comes to fatherhood, and especially in a split home,
right,
or the parents not together anymore. Majority of men get the bad rep, but it's great dads out there like yourself that know every moment in their child life, like you just described to the podcast world. Every moment that happened with your daughter, and that's amazing, because that what mothers would tell you about kids. to come out of a guy mouth is just amazing. You
Well,
know.
I appreciate it. I think there's been a huge shift socially and culturally in that regard. There's a lot of single fathers out there, and me being a lawyer, I see that more and more than probably was ever noticed in history. And now we see jurisprudence catching up to that. We see the tender years doctrine, which was a doctrine of law that said within the first 2 years, the mother should have the custody of the child. That is no longer applicable anymore because there are so many parenting fathers that you just can't attribute that only to the mother. Not only that, we see equal deference given to both sides of the parenting aisle, the father and the mother. And
Right.
it's amazing what we see courts and legal jurisprudence leaning more towards the father, as so that it's equal between the two. Not there's any preference, but there is deference given to both sides the same amount.
Well, absolutely. And another thing about being a dad, a great dad, I always say this: a girl loved their dad. I see that in a lot of families dealing with dance teams I had in the past, and that when the daughter drops off by the dad and the dad picks up the daughter, it's just amazing energy, love that just vibrates through the air. So yes, a daughter does love her dad.
Well, I was the saddest moment of my life. Not really. This is in jest. Was when my daughter told me she didn't want to play football anymore. And so she was the daddy's girl, and she grew up loving football, playing football. She could throw a football better than other kids, and we'd go out to the Pop Warner fields when I would coach 7th and 8-year-olds, and the 9 and 10-year-old coaches would ask me if my daughter could play for their team, could play quarterback for their team. And
Whoa.
yeah, she was good, very talented, gifted, but she said she didn't want to. She wanted to cheerlead. And of course, my heart was broken, but also she moved on and she became a great cheerleader. She was a college cheerleader. She's done so much for herself, and she'll continue to do great things.
Absolutely.
And surpass, I think, all of the milestones that I believe I've accomplished in my life, things that I didn't even think I would accomplish. I think she's gonna outshine, my brightest star moments.
Well, she has a great motto to follow that in her dad, Robert Deming III.
I am the third.
So you the third. Did you have an opportunity to meet the first?
I have not. I've never met my grandfather.
Okay.
So I no clue. My dad was an absent father, so he wasn't a role model for me. It's nothing. I learned nothing except the importance of not being gone. You learn lessons in life. You learn all kinds of lessons. My mother, like I said, was a single mother raising 4 kids, so she worked tirelessly, and she did. She was a cocktail waitress in Las Vegas, and I remember on weekends we would go help her clean out trailers for extra money. She did everything she could to make sure we didn't starve. And
Wow.
so, all respect due and praise given to my mother.
Wow.
And what we learned, I don't have the bond with my mother that I think a lot of people, like you said, a daddy's little girl and a mama's boy. But we don't have that bond because she worked. I never connected with her on that level because she was so focused and so busy on making sure that we had enough to survive, that I didn't have that. But what I learned were a lot of valuable lessons. Like I said, you learn from everything, and you should learn from everything. If you're not learning from everything, then you're losing in life. You might not have the greatest outcome, you might not have the best things, but if you're not learning, you really have nothing.
That's right.
Lessons are more valuable than any diamond or gold.
I do agree. So seeing your mother go through those adversities in life and doing whatever she did to make sure her kids were taken care of, that's because you're a strong-minded guy.
Absolutely, you have to be.
Did that give you your strength when you?
So you can argue nature versus nurture. I don't know if genetically I was just going to be a strong-minded individual or not, but absolutely the converse argument is that contributed. If there was anything that contributed, it was that. And I'm a hard worker. I don't understand quitting. But I also understand respect.
Right.
And she instilled respect at the youngest age, and she was she still is a 5'2", maybe a 90-pound woman. But I feared her like she was. I couldn't even tell you there is no fear like the fear I had
Right.
from my mother.
Right.
You know, part of it was she would take anything in the house and throw it at me, and the other part was I'd lose her respect.
Oh, she was a real mother, like they would say today. She was a mother.
Oh, you know how many stirring spoons she's broken over me in her day? I mean,
well, she did a great job. I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen. Like I told you, I know this guy personally. She did a great job in raising a great man, because that's what he is. He always been that. No matter what he was in, he always researched and did whatever it took to be number one in no matter what the category was. He made sure he was number one, and other people around him would enjoy, the benefits of what he produced. And that's what we look for in a candidate in any community. So the story you just told us is great, and I'm glad you're here, because this story needs to get out about who you really are and the things you just been through. So yes, when you are campaigning, do you put that whole story out, or just what you can do?
It depends. I talk to everyone, and I talk about whatever necessitates the situation. When people ask me questions, I never hold back the truth, so I tell them. And sometimes I speak ad nauseum, so they get sick of hearing me talk. Sometimes that's a plus, because I get out of talking even more, because they get tired of listening and they shut themselves off. No, that's a joke. I am verbose and I speak a lot, but I do try to maintain that sense of integrity. But it is about being the best at anything I do, and I've always been that way. Even if what I'm doing isn't revered as being the best thing for me or for others, I'm going to be number one. You look at, as a council person, my ward, I've paved more roads in my ward than probably have been paved in the 30 years before me.
Whoa.
I forced the city to pass a balanced budget, a truly balanced budget, not a deficit budget, and we did pass it. Those are things that I pride myself on. Now, I know I can't make everyone happy. I know there's some road that hasn't been paved yet. I promise I'm trying to get to it. I can't pave every road at the same time, and we have money limitations. There's some drainage that I want to repair, and I tell people that, look, I'm going to work to repair it. It doesn't get done, and they may hate me for never repairing it, but it's not because I didn't. It's only because I couldn't. And there are restraints that are beyond me, like money. The city only has so much money, and I'm only one person on the council. I have to deal with and contend with 6 other people that have issues in their ward, and I have to determine what's in the best interest of the city as a whole. It's hard to say we can spend $1 million on fixing a pipe on one road in my street when we don't have roads paved on East Biloxi.
Absolutely.
When there's bigger issues that we have to address, we have to address them, but no issue is bigger than your own issue.
Right.
And so the one thing I've learned is I have to deal with that as well. Everybody believes that their issue is the most important issue, and how you juggle that is what makes you a stronger individual. I think as a person and a politician altogether, I don't know that there's any fix to every problem that's going to make anyone happy all the way around.
Right.
So it's the old adage, you can't make everyone happy all the time. And I think that's true. I remember the first vote that I took as a city council person, I had some comments on Facebook that people were upset. And
that comes with it. Yeah.
It does. And an old seasoned veteran told me, Robert, either don't read those comments or have thick skin, and then read the comments the next week. And he was right. The same people that were upset with what I voted for last week cheered what I voted for the next week, and those that cheered what I voted for the first week were upset with what I voted for the next week. And it's a political roller coaster. So you have to find those issues that are really important to everybody, and you focus and key on those. There are plenty of other residual issues that you're going to have to deal with that are always going to make someone unhappy. For example, spending the money to fix one road when the other person's road hasn't been fixed yet either. They're going to think you should have fixed their road first. And I get that, because I'm like that. I'm human, and I think that's human nature. And so the best thing you can do is make the most educated decision you can possibly make and do the right thing. And if you stand on principle, you'll always stand.
Absolutely. I do agree. And like you said, there's limitations in money and funding.
And time.
When you just can't, get to that one problem they've been griping about before you got to office, because a lot of stuff linger on from other politicians before you.
Absolutely.
And a problem lingers on. And yes, they voted for you. You're their man. And by the way, let me tell you what I what we want. Out of you. The other guy didn't do it. And we voted for you. We
Right.
think you can do it. And I can understand that if you don't have the funding to do it, yeah, they will hate you. But like you said, your principles are very strong in every aspect of it.
So let me tell you a funny story.
Mhm.
I had a constituent, a resident in my ward, called me and say, Robert, you promised me when you were running, you came to my house and you met me, and you were running, and you promised you'd take care of this tree in the easement behind my house.
Mhm.
And I said, I don't recall that, but I know one thing about me. I don't promise anything.
Right.
I never promise it because I can't guarantee that anything's going to get done. As a council person, I control the purse strings and the legislation. But what actually gets accomplished has to go through the administration's office, and I have to make sure that there's an ordinance or a resolution that allows or gives us authority to accomplish that. I don't believe I've ever promised you anything.
Right.
And so she said, no, you came to my house and you promised me. And she said, and I supported you and I voted for you and I'll never vote for you again. So the funny thing about this is Google Maps is amazing. So I was telling the story to one of my clerks at City Hall. And she said, well, which location was it? Which tree? Because I'll see if we can get that accomplished for her. And I said, okay. And she goes to the map and zooms in. And in her yard, I guess the Google trucks came around and took a picture of the property during this election cycle.
Mhm.
In her yard is a campaign sign. It's a Robert campaign sign. Robert Collier. It was my opponent,
Wow.
who's also named Robert, who she supported because she had his campaign sign in her yard. So it wasn't me that met her.
Wasn't you.
It wasn't me that promised it to her, but I still called her. And, the way this resolved is I called her, and I don't even ever think I told her that. But I did tell her the situation. I told her what the law is. And I told her if I did promise her, I was mistaken and I was sorry, but here's a resolution. The tree was in the easement, and the law says the easement is owned by the landowners. So the only time the city can do anything in the easement is if it is interfering with the flow of drainage or something like that. Now the tree was not interfering with the flow of drainage. It was growing away from the drain, it was away from the ditch, and it was affecting her fence. It was breaking her fence. And so I told her that the city can't, by law, we can't do that. It's a violation. That's private property. It would be a violation of our duty if we interfered with something on private property. But my company would donate the money to her. If she found a private contractor that would take that tree down, I would personally help her with it. It was only a couple $100, but it meant the world to her. She couldn't
Absolutely.
afford to bring in a contractor to do it. And so, what I've done, what I've prided myself on is being not just a politician that helps the people, but an individual that helps the people. And that's what we've gotten away from, I think.
Right.
I think a big problem in our society isn't that government doesn't do enough for us anymore. It's that we don't do enough for each other anymore.
I agree.
I think back in the day, we could look at economically. We could look at the amount of contributions that come from the community and goes back into the community versus the amount of money that goes from the community to the government, and we could see an inverse correlation. The more money that goes into the government that's confiscated from us through taxation reduces the amount of money that we put into the community itself.
Right.
And so there's a direct correlation, but how much money do we get from the government back into our community? So I think when we look at that, there's a problem because we get a fraction of the percentage of money that goes to government back into our local communities.
Right.
If we sent less to government, we'd see an increased percentage of money that comes out of our community that would go back into our community. And so that's my fundamental belief. I partnered with Hands On Mississippi, and we did food drops all over southern Mississippi. We were bringing 500 pounds and in some cases 1,000 pounds of food into local communities, and we would proportion them out to about 38 to 40 pounds of fresh foods, meats, vegetables, eggs, things like that. And people would line up. All you had to be was a resident of the county. You didn't matter if you were poor, didn't matter if you were rich, didn't matter if you were Hispanic, white, black, or whatever creed or demographic you were from. It didn't matter. As long as you were from the county and you needed something, and you were willing to stand in line, we would donate it to you, and it helped a lot of people. And that's what I believe we have to do. And in that, there was zero government dollars. That was volunteers my company and other companies donating to that. Companies from food banks that would give to us. Mississippi Power that would donate some funds to help buy food from food banks. It was churches that would donate volunteers and locations to set up. It was the community giving back to the community, and that's the way it should be. And that's the way it used to be until government got bigger and bigger and bigger and started needing more money from us. And so you see our taxes would start increasing, and people because they had to pay into the government, couldn't give back to the community the way it was.
Right.
And that's really hurt us. I think that's hurt society in general.
Mm-hmm. Hands-on communities, it's still running, is it still here?
We are working on, there were some concerns with I was a private company. It was Deming Enterprises that was teaming up with Hands On Mississippi. Hands On Mississippi, I think they have been dissolved, but for other reasons, nothing negative. I think the issue they were working with, they were getting a lot of funding from doing things for courts and court services and different probation. I'm not really sure exactly where they were getting their actual funding from, but what we are looking to do, I am looking to partner with another company and create a new nonprofit, hopefully with the same name if they're not using it,
right? And
start doing that again, reviving what we were doing under another 501c3 corporation.
I like that. To inspire people to start helping each other, no matter the race, color, or creed, or religion. I like that because you're right. You're absolutely right. If we get around here helping each other, that takes away government influence, or we relying on the government to do almost everything.
Who's going to be more efficient with what the community needs?
The people in the community.
People in the community, or
right.
the people thousands of miles away in some other state and some other district. It's going to be us. We know what our people need. We know what everybody needs. I remember after Katrina, helping out, volunteering with groups to go rebuild homes for veterans and for elderly that couldn't do it themselves, that their homes were damaged or destroyed by Katrina. I was a victim of Katrina. We lost our home, and we lived on people's floors. Then we slept on church benches for a long period. We slept in a FEMA trailer.
Right.
It was difficult. And so I remember in junior college after that Katrina event, doing some volunteer work with different groups to go help other victims of Katrina that couldn't really help themselves. Whereas I was an able-bodied adult. We went in my home, and it flooded 3 or 4 feet, so we had to tear everything out and start from scratch, all of our personal possessions. A very, very sad moment in my life was when we returned after the storm, and my daughter wasn't with me, but we had to go in and take everything out of the house and put it on the curb so the trucks could come pick it up.
Whoa.
We got back and they hadn't come, and my daughter saw everything of hers, her house, her doll houses, her bed, her toys sitting in a pile, and she couldn't understand why she couldn't go play with that stuff. And that was really heartbreaking for me, hard for her. But those moments are moments that make you realize that we're not alone in our communities.
Absolutely.
We need each other, and others need us as well as we need others.
I like that. That's a great philosophy on life and on being a politician. And from this podcast, they're gonna see that you're a caring guy. You care. You can't sleep until the job is done. If someone asks you something, like you say, you never promise no one anything, but you still try to rectify that situation with that lady. Just going back through the little things you just mentioned, and you're a Katrina victim. All of these things matter when you're trying to rebuild something that's been damaged. So you know what it is to go through adversities of the coast, the Golden Coast. You here, you've been through things, and it takes one or the other. And I think the first thing you mentioned was helping each other achieve greatness.
Right.
When you're doing that, you can't. There's no government. We are the government. Even though the government is gonna do what they do, but I like your philosophy. And if someone hearing me right now, if you ever was thinking about supporting or voting for anybody, I'm gonna let you decide from this podcast. We all smart individuals out there in the world, especially in this Gulf Coast area. Mr. Robert Deming III, ladies and gentlemen. And before we go, Mr. Deming, What was one of the greatest accomplishments you did as councilman?
One of the greatest accomplishments as a councilman, that's hard. People ask me, what is it that you like about what you do? And it's just what I do. I don't know what my greatest accomplishment is. We've raised millions of dollars of capital investment to help improve the quality of living here on the Gulf Coast. I've paved more roads in the ward that I represent than anybody before me. I don't know what my greatest accomplishment is. I really don't know. Maybe
when is that many? Y'all just listen to that. The ones that's just listening and you can't see his face, this guy has done a lot of things to improve the community in Biloxi that he just can't pick one. That was a trick question coming from me just to see how he would respond. And I know y'all was like, well, if he just single out one thing, I know how people listen to things. He done a lot of things. That's why it's hard for him to pick one. This is your guy. This one of the greatest guys I ever met in my life, Mr. Robert Deming III. And before we get out of here, is anything you want to enlighten the people with that they don't know about Mr. Robert Deming, or something you trying to create, or anything you want to elaborate on?
I don't think there is. I think this was a good conversation. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
But if we open up any other can of worms, like I said, I'm verbose. We'll need another 30-minute podcast.
Well, there it is. Robert Deming III. Like I told you, now you know why he's great. I said it at the beginning of the interview. This is a great guy. From the talk, from the story, from the conversation, now you know why Robert Deming III is great. He's your guy. Thank y'all, and good night. I want to thank y'all once again for tuning in to Coastal Spotlight. You made it to the end of another episode. I appreciate that. And we appreciate that here at Coastal Spotlight. And we also want to thank the Sugar Factory inside Hard Rock, Biloxi. That's right, Sugar Factory have great food and fantastic drinks. In front of me, I have two of my favorite drinks, Sour Apple Lolly, Caramel Macchiato Martini. You can only find these drinks at Sugar Factory. Thank you, and good night.